Some names stay with us for generations. They become bigger than the people who first carried them. Over time, stories grow around them, and the truth of who they really were gets lost. Rothschild is one of those names. For more than 200 years, this family has been described as the richest in the world, the most powerful, the most dangerous. But who are they really? This is the Rothschild Deep Dive, where I'll expose everything. To understand the Rothschilds, you have to understand the world they came from. And that world was a world of walls. In the 1700s, Frankfurt was one of the most important trading cities in Europe. Crowned emperors were elected here, but if you were Jewish in Frankfurt, none of that freedom belonged to you. The city's Jewish population, about 3,000 people, was forced to live on a single street called the Judengasse, the Jewish lane. It was narrow, crowded, and sealed at both ends by heavy iron gates. Every night, those gates were locked. Jews were forbidden to leave at all. They couldn't walk in the public parks. They couldn't own land outside the ghetto. They paid special taxes just for existing. And violence was never far away. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born in 1744, right in the middle of that street. His family had lived there for generations. The name Rothschild literally means red shield. It came from the sign hanging outside their house, a red shield that had once marked the building when street numbers didn't exist yet. His parents died young. Mayer Amschel was orphaned before he was 12. Like a lot of boys from the ghetto, he was sent to study to become a rabbi. He was bright, curious, good with numbers, but his real passion wasn't studying religious texts. It was money. Not in the greedy sense, but in the sense of understanding how value worked. How a coin from one German state was worth more or less than a coin from another. So he left the religious school and came back to Frankfurt. He got a job at a banking house in Hanover, learned the trade, and then returned to the Judengasse to set up his own tiny business. He dealt in old coins, metals, antiques, the kind of things that wealthy aristocrats like to collect. And one of those aristocrats would change everything. Crown Prince William of Hesse-Kassel was not a nice man by modern standards. He was one of the wealthiest rulers in the German states, and he made a lot of that money by renting out Hessian soldiers to fight in other people's wars. Thousands of young men from his territory were sent to die in conflicts across Europe, and even in America. The prince got paid in hard cash for every soldier, but the prince also had a softer hobby. He collected rare coins. And Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the polite and knowledgeable young dealer from the ghetto, started selling him pieces at good prices. This was the first step. Slowly, carefully, over many years, Rothschild built a relationship with the prince. He didn't push, he didn't demand. He made himself useful, reliable, trustworthy. And by the 1790s, he wasn't just selling coins anymore. He was handling bills of exchange, the paper instruments that let merchants move money across borders without physically carrying gold. He was becoming a banker. To understand why Mayer Amschel's business grew so fast, you have to understand what banking looked like in the late 1700s. Europe wasn't a bunch of unified countries yet. Germany alone was a patchwork of more than 300 separate states, each with its own coins, its own taxes, its own rules. Moving money from one place to another was slow, expensive, and incredibly risky. A letter of credit from a bank in Frankfurt might be worthless in London, unless you had a network of agents who trusted each other enough to honor it. Mayer Amschel started building that network. He used family connections. He married Gutle Schnapper in 1770. They had 10 surviving children, 5 sons and 5 daughters. And Mayer Amschel had a plan for those boys. A plan that would turn a small coin dealership into the most powerful financial network in the world. The big break came during the French Revolutionary Wars. Starting in 1792, France exploded into revolution, and soon the whole continent was at war. Armies on the march needed food, boots, guns, and money. Lots of money. The Elector of Hesse, that same Prince William now promoted, saw his territory threatened by the advancing French. He had a massive fortune, much of it in gold and silver, and he needed to hide it from Napoleon's looters. So he did something remarkable. He handed a huge chunk of his wealth to Mayer Amschel Rothschild, a Jewish banker from the ghetto, and told him to make it disappear. Rothschild didn't steal it. He used his growing network of agents and his sons to smuggle the money through Hamburg, through Denmark, into London, beyond Napoleon's reach. When the wars ended, the money came back, plus interest. The elector trusted him completely after that. The symbol of the Rothschild family became 5 arrows tied together. The idea was simple. A single arrow can be snapped easily, but 5 arrows bound together are almost impossible to break. It was a lesson Mayer Amschel taught his sons, and it became the family motto: Concordia, Integritas, Industria. Harmony, integrity, industry. But it was also a business strategy, a revolutionary one. Mayer Amschel sent his 5 sons to 5 different financial centers. Amschel, the eldest, stayed in Frankfurt to run the original house. Salomon went to Vienna. Nathan went to London. Karl went to Naples. And James, the youngest, went to Paris. Each son was set up as an independent banker in his own city. But they weren't truly independent. They were bound by contracts and by blood. They shared information, they shared profits, they moved money and news between their cities faster than any government or competitor could manage. In an age before the telegraph, the Rothschilds built a private intelligence network that covered Europe. A piece of financial news that would take a government 2 weeks to receive, a Rothschild agent could deliver in 4 days. That speed was worth millions. But the brother who really turned the family from comfortable to colossal was Nathan. Nathan had arrived in Manchester in the 1790s. He bought cotton goods from British factories and sold them across Europe. But he quickly realized that the real money wasn't in cloth. It was in the paper that financed the factories and the warships. He moved to London and set up N.M. Rothschild and Sons in the City of London, the financial heart of the British Empire. He arrived just as Britain was entering the most expensive war in its history, the struggle against Napoleon. From 1803 to 1815, Britain poured an absolute fortune into defeating the French. The government needed loans, huge, continuous, unbroken flows of gold and silver. They needed to pay their own army and navy, and they needed to get hard currency to Wellington's army in Spain and Portugal, which was slowly grinding Napoleon's forces down. This was Nathan Rothschild's moment. The historian Niall Ferguson has documented what happened next in incredible detail. Nathan Rothschild, working with his brothers, pulled off one of the most audacious financial operations of the entire war. Wellington's army in Spain was running out of money. The soldiers hadn't been paid. Supplies were running low. The British government had the gold, but they couldn't get it to Wellington. Nathan Rothschild stepped in. He used his family network to collect gold bullion from across Europe. He then smuggled it through France itself, yes, through enemy territory, using a combination of bribes, false papers, and sheer nerve. The gold reached Wellington. The army stayed in the field, and Napoleon's generals found themselves facing a well-supplied, well-paid enemy that refused to collapse. Through logistics, intelligence, and bold risk-taking, the Rothschilds became Europe's preferred bankers after Waterloo. By the early 19th century, they had created a private financial empire with the reach of a great power. In the decades after Waterloo, the Rothschilds became the most famous bankers in the world. They lent money to kings. They financed the first railways. James de Rothschild in Paris became a financial pillar of the French monarchy. And then, after the Revolution of 1830, of King Louis-Philippe, Salomon in Vienna was indispensable to the Habsburg Empire. In London, the family was so powerful that when the British government decided to abolish slavery in 1835, it was the Rothschilds who loaned the government £20 million to compensate slave owners. That's a complicated and troubling fact. The family was acting as financial intermediaries, not as politicians, but their money greased the wheels of a deeply unjust system. And it fed the growing idea that this family was something more than human. So, picture this. It's December 1972. The place is the Château de Ferrières, this enormous fairy tale palace outside Paris, owned by the French branch of the Rothschild family. The hostess is Marie-Hélène de Rothschild. She's glamorous, a little eccentric, and she loves throwing parties that nobody will ever forget. This time, the theme is surrealism. Guests start arriving after dark. They come through a tunnel of torchlight, and the costumes are genuinely unhinged. A woman walks in with a full set of antlers on her head, wrapped in gold. A man has turned himself into a human chess piece. Another one is covered head to toe in tiny mirrors. The invitation, by the way, was printed completely backwards. You literally needed a mirror to read it. Salvador Dalí was involved in planning it, because of course he was. Inside, the chateau was turned into a waking dream. And then there were the plates. The plates are one of those details that people still talk about, because they were covered in what looked and felt like human hair. Imagine sitting down at a fancy table, reaching out, and your fingertips touch fur. It was meant to be unsettling. The food was just as weird. The whole point was to confuse your senses. Savory dishes that looked like cake. Sweet things that looked like raw meat. Vegetables carved to look like severed fingers. And then, the centerpiece. The thing that has taken on a life of its own in the decades since. On a silver tray, laid out on a bed of greenery, was what looked like a roasted human baby. It was meant to be shocking, and it was, but it wasn't real. It was a sculpture made from marzipan, sugar, and pâté. It pushed boundaries. And the wealthy have always liked to show off by serving things that most people would never dream of eating or even looking at. Let's talk about the hunting parties. The Rothschilds, like pretty much every rich European family back in the day, were into hunting. Big time. They had shooting estates in England, France, Austria. They kept detailed game books, proper leather-bound ledgers where they wrote down exactly how many birds, deer, and rabbits were killed on a given day. But what conspiracy theories claim is far more sinister. The allegation is that these hunts weren't really about animals. They were training or cover for something darker. The stories vary, but the most common one goes like this. On certain nights, on private Rothschild land, human beings are the prey.
So at the hunting parties, they would, they'd have all these expendable children outside in the woods, and usually they have holding grounds like a tunnel system or something underground where they hold the kids in cages until the time of the hunt. The hunt usually happens later, once it's dark outside. So what they'll do is they kind of they'll kind of make a perimeter, which is pretty large, of these woods, and they'll station different elite people around the perimeter. And then when they give the go, they release the kids, and the kids are told just to run, to hide. And that's when the elite will go through the woods and start hunting for them. When they catch them, a lot of times they will first abuse them, and then they'll them. Not everybody will get in that situation. If they don't, then they're used for other hunts. But there were kids that I saw who, were really good survivors, and they would just continuously have to relive this trauma. So those were the kids on the outside, and then because we were hierarchy kids, we were on the inside. So on the inside, usually in the house or the lodge, you would have the older men who were too old. Sometimes it did include women, but they were too old to be out in the woods hunting for the kids. So they brought everything indoors for those individuals. And those individuals were not allowed to, but they were allowed to capture the hierarchy children. Once, the signal was given that the hunt was on, you were just trying to escape, hide, and not be found. And sometimes they would make it seem, for the kids, like it was a hide and seek game, so unless you got caught, you really didn't know what happened.
Some versions even tie this directly to the Surrealist Ball, as if the party was just the warm-up act for the killing. So let's be very clear, there is no evidence for any of it. The myth that Jews children in secret rituals is called the blood libel. and it has been used to justify for centuries. Now it's been updated with hunting pinks and private jets. In modern conspiracy culture, the Rothschilds are routinely described as members, often the leaders, of the Illuminati, the New World Order, the secret group that supposedly controls everything. The evidence offered for this is almost always guilt by association. A Rothschild attended a Bilderberg conference. Therefore, the Bilderberg Group is a Rothschild front. The Bilderberg meetings are real. They were founded in 1954, and they bring together politicians, business leaders, and academics from Europe and North America for private, off-the-record discussions. Rothschild family members have attended, alongside hundreds of other influential people, prime ministers, CEOs, journalists. The meetings are private, which invites suspicion. But journalists who have attended report that they are policy discussions, not secret rituals. No evidence has ever emerged that Bilderberg is a command center for a global conspiracy. The Illuminati were a real group, a secret society founded in Bavaria in 1776, dedicated to Enlightenment ideals. They were suppressed and dissolved within a decade. They have not existed for more than 200 years. The modern idea of the Illuminati as a surviving, all-powerful organization is a fiction, popularized by books like The Illuminatus Trilogy in the 1970s and then adopted by conspiracy culture. We can't talk about these conspiracy theories without talking about anti-Semitism. The Rothschild conspiracy theory is really based on one of the oldest anti-Semitic ideas around, the belief that Jewish people secretly run the world through money and financial power. This idea has been used for hundreds of years to justify discrimination and persecution. It was used in Tsarist Russia, it was used in Nazi Germany, and it's still used today, especially online, often through coded language that doesn't always mention Jews directly. Instead, using terms like Rothschild, globalists, or the elite. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone who questions the Rothschilds' influence is anti-Semitic. Legitimate questions about wealth and power are not the same as conspiratorial paranoia. But the specific narrative, the all-powerful Jewish banking family controlling governments and media and wars, that narrative comes directly from the anti-Semitic imagination. Understanding that history is important, because when you come across a Rothschild conspiracy theory online, you're not just seeing a theory about one family. You're seeing a very old story, one that has been used to justify hatred, discrimination, and violence. If you walked into the headquarters of Rothschild & Co. in London today, you would find a well-respected financial advisory firm. It helps companies merge and acquire one another. It manages money for wealthy clients. It advises governments on privatizations and restructurings. It is a well-established firm with a long history. But it is not one of the biggest banks in the world, not even close. Before the family took it private in 2023, Rothschild & Co. was worth about $3.5 billion on the stock market. That's a large company, but it's very small compared to J.P. Morgan Chase, which is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It's also much smaller than BlackRock, which manages more than $9 trillion in assets. The Rothschilds still have influence. They still have wealth. They still move in elite circles. But their power today is a shadow of what it was in the 19th century, and even then, it was never as absolute as the myths claim. There are other Rothschild businesses as well. The Edmund de Rothschild Group, run by another branch of the family, is based in Switzerland and specializes in private banking and investment management. The family also owns some of the world's most famous vineyards, producing wines that can sell for thousands of dollars per bottle. In addition, Rothschild charitable foundations support projects in the arts, education, and environmental protection. The Rothschilds understood that power better than anyone in their time. But they also understood something else, that the greatest power of all is not the power to control the world. It's the power to make the world believe you do.